Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. And welcome back to the show. We are so excited to have Dr. Maureen O'Shaughnessy joining us here today, live on the show and the Zoomcast and podcast from LEADPrep. That's LEADPrep, Micro School and Education Evolution. Excited to have her here from Seattle, Washington. Welcome to the show. How are you?
I am great, Jill. Thank you for having me.
Oh, pleasure to have you here. I'm so excited to find out more about your own journey, your own path of education. To start, would you mind sharing that with us and the audience today?
Sure. I have always been kind of an educational rebel and I didn't even know it. I just believe in possibilities. And I had a chance in elementary school to be a mentor for other students and resource rooms. So I got to see all different levels of education. And then in high school, I wanted different things to happen. So it's like, hey, can we start a National Honor Society? Hey, can we do this? And then it carried on once I became a teacher. It's like, hey, can we have a pullout for these gifted kids to enrich because they're kind of getting frustrated? And then, hey, can we start a school within a school for these at-risk high school kids that are falling through the cracks? So when I see a need, all of these ideas and resources kind of gather in my mind, and it's really easy for us to do more for our learners when we kind of are willing to be outside that box.
Beautiful. And just to point out, lead-prep.org is the website. You can go right there. So you're a virtual educational experience in a sense. So you don't have to be in Seattle. You could be anywhere around the world. And
Well, actually, no, our lead prep school is in Seattle.
okay,
And then my podcast and my other work is through Education Evolution, and the two of
got
them
it.
overlap.
Oh my goodness. All right. We got to find out more details about you, what you do, of course. I want to talk more about, the work you're doing with Lead Prep, but also need a little more on your background. So you have how many daughters?
Two.
Two. Tell us about you and your family, and of course,
Oh,
how that you helped you and changed you. I have a 6 and 8-year-old, two boys. I get it.
exactly. I mean, the best and most complicated part of my life is being a mom. So, yeah. So, and happy belated Mother's Day to you.
Thank you. Same to you and all the moms listening today.
Yes. So I moved my girls overseas when they were 1 and 3 because I had been able to study and work overseas. And for the next 10 years, we did 2 year hops. And most of that, I was a single mom. And so the three of us are super tight. So, yeah, they were little tiny wee ones in Kuwait with women in big black gowns that gave them hugs and loved them up. And then they were in the Andes in Peru where guinea pigs were in the marketplace as a food
Food.
item.
Yeah.
Every place they had. Hungary, they got to go over to Austria and learn how to ski. It's just on and on. And then Ecuador, I was running a school there, and they got to go out to the Galapagos and they got to
See
hone their
penguins.
Spanish. So, and then we did the Philippines, which was amazing. And we got to go over to Angkor Wat and just experience Thailand and scuba diving in warm water because it's cold water in Seattle. So raising them overseas was super powerful. But then I brought them back to Seattle for high school because I wanted more options in English. Oftentimes we were in countries where we were one of the only schools in the city spoken in, instruction in English. And it was really frustrating. My older daughter has autism ADHD. My younger one is fierce and jumped a grade and wants learning on her terms and wants a voice. And we tried 6 or 7 different models. I finally helped them graduate early. And I hadn't realized how much community had been overseas and how teachers and everybody personalized and adjusted for different kids, different cultures, different family expectations. And I wanted to create a small community where we also could do what I wish my daughters had had and personalize and make it hands-on and give them a voice and play to their strengths and slow down, speed up. And you can't do that. You can't do that. I couldn't do that when I taught high school and had 5 classes of 30 kids each. It was kind of this assembly line. So I decided to create a school where we could do that.
Amazing. And we're going to talk more about that. But I first want to know, where did you grow up? And so you became a teacher. Could you share that
Uh-huh.
journey with us? And what did you used to teach?
Sure. I grew up in central Washington, and it was a small college town and a farming community. So the furthest I got up and down the West Coast was just barely across the border into Canada, into British Columbia, and barely across the border into Tijuana and Mexico. So I grew up without any real travel besides just that little snippet. And then in college, I got to study in Mexico and Spain and was hooked. So because I was studying overseas, I
Wow.
got a lot of Spanish credits. I also got a minor in elementary ed and a minor in psychology. So I kind of had this interdisciplinary degree. And then I became a sixth grade teacher, which is the top of the
Yeah.
elementary school I was in. So I worked with upper elementary.
But you felt like you wanted more and you wanted to see more, travel more, and experience more. This is I've been to Kuwait, I've been to Iraq as a
Ah,
reporter myself, working with the troops and stuff during not covering the war, but doing the humanitarian thing, bringing them
mhm.
presents from their family. We did live satellites, but I've been to Kuwait. I mean, the women are amazing, and like
Yes.
people have like a stigma of someone. No, no, they're. I mean, and the Iraqi children. I mean, beautiful people. So I give you so much
Yes.
credit. I got goosebumps. It's hard enough for me to travel with my kids alone because I'm a single mom myself. But knowing that you're working and moving and just, I commend you. And what an amazing story. We need a whole show just on you, and I want to talk about that. But let's get to lead prep, okay? Tell me
Yes.
more about lead prep. Go ahead.
Well, it was kind of nice because I'd run large schools, public, private, Catholic. I'd worked in a Episcopalian school. So it was like I felt like I could just pull from all of these resources and from best practices. Like in the US, our high schoolers get up way too early because they're the first round of getting bused to school. And if they have a 0 hour, they could be at school as early as 6:30. And we know their brains are not waking up until like 9. So we decided to start lead prep at 9 o'clock. We know when kids get to create and have to do the thinking that it's richer learning than when they're talked at, which they kind of glaze over. So we decided to do project based and flipped, where the teachers do a mini lesson in advance and then the kids unpack and create in the class time. We know that learning happens everywhere. So 1 day a week and 3 weeks a year, we're expeditionary. We're on a camping trip. We're doing service projects. We're doing intensives in cooking or in art or in outdoor survival. It was nice just to take what we saw that was important: social emotional learning, checking in, connecting, reflecting, checking out at the end of the day, self advocacy. We pulled this in, and it works easier in a micro school. And it works easier when we have one teacher for every 6 kids because you're teaching and co-teaching and you're forming creative, or excuse me, you're forming this community. And also multi-age is nice. A kid can be a little ahead in math, a little behind in language arts. Nobody knows or cares. So micro schools are sweet. I've worked with a lot of them. I've founded 3. Just small makes it a lot easier to be community. I can't be community with 1,000 students when I have to have systems in place to keep track of them and monitor tardies and all of that. We lose personalization when we gain some other pieces from larger schools.
Wow, amazing. So now lead prep, let's talk a little more about the learning beliefs based on your 10 years with the lead prep service. Could you share a little bit about that?
A big belief of ours is that love and belonging and relationships are foundational, and neuroscience supports that. We know when you look at the brain, you have to feel safe. Safety is just a basic need before anything else can happen. You also have to feel like you're a part of a community and you belong, to really access the frontal lobe and say, okay, I'm willing to raise my hand and take a risk here, or try a project that may not, to follow this hypothesis, and the project may or may not work, but I'm design thinking and I can do different iterations. So we know that the relational piece is super important. And a lot of our kids say they love coming to the school because the teachers care about them, the teachers have relationships with them. So relationships is one of the key pieces.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Relationships involve everything, right?
Exactly. And then real world learning. Kids have to feel like things are real. I know my daughters a lot of times, when will I ever use this? Why are they making me do this? And so whenever possible, we give the kids as much choice as we can. So, okay, we're doing photography. What do you want to
Yeah.
capture? How do you want to do this? Do you
Hmm.
want to work more on the filming or more on the editing? We give kids a choice
Yeah.
as much as possible across the curriculum. Math is self-paced. We want it to be real for them, and we need to be able to answer, when will this be used? Or to reflect it back to the kids. When do you think you will use this? How is this applicable? So we also have room for passion projects and for our older kids to do internships on our expeditionary Wednesdays, because we want them ready for the real world. And that means being great thinkers. It's not as important to memorize content anymore because we can get it, it's at our fingertips. But what do we do with that content in this
Yeah.
quickly changing world? And what are my skills? What are my passions? What's my purpose? So that I'm moving forward and doing things that work for me. So that's learner
Beautiful.
centered for us. And
Okay.
that's super important.
Now, education evolution, how does that further this cause?
So in 2018, it's like, I love what we're doing in the Northwest, but I want to have a bigger impact. So that summer, I wrote a book, Creating Micro Schools for Colorful Mismatched Socks. And my board president was a contributing editor. We had like 2 months before the school year started, but I wanted to tell others, here are some steps you can take to create your own micro school. And here's how we applied those steps. And that felt good, but it was kind of like, I'm seeing and hearing so many cool things. How can I pass that on and get it beyond the Northwest? And how can I get some of the advice that I'm able to give and some of the connections I'm able to share with curious parents and teachers? How can I get that broader? So then in the spring of 2020, I created the Education Evolution podcast.
Yeah.
And it is super fun just to showcase amazing things going on out there. The founder, the pioneer of flipped learning has been on. The Getting Smart CEO who's done all this crazy cool stuff after he left the Gates Foundation. The cool stuff going on in North Carolina, in the Edgecombe County, the ways that kids can get into college through vocational P-Tech. I mean, there's just so many neat things going on out there. And I want us to not ever accept the status quo, our 1800s model that we're kind of locked into because the thought of changing schools is too daunting. So we keep doing that assembly line model that was for a whole different era. So I'm trying to say, hey guys, look at this, look at that, see these resources, pick whatever and combine them, but let's do more to make our learning equitable and learner centered.
Wow. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And let's just remind everyone how we can reach out to you. Would you mind sharing all forms of contact?
Sure. LinkedIn is a super easy one. And then Maureen at Education Evolution is another great one. More,
Perfect.
I should say evolution. Let me see. Maureen at educationevolution.org. There.
Perfect. And lead-prep.org. Just want to remind everyone. Also, let's
Yes.
talk a little bit about now the Education Evolution podcast that you're doing. And did you hear? I'm reading about a summit during lockdown. What's this all about? Tell us about your
Uh,
show.
One of the things that's a sad theme that I see in doing this wonderful podcast that constantly inspires me, and it's kind of this hobby and love of mine, is that we're in our silos and we're in Iowa creating this really cool school within a school, or we're in Rhode Island helping to get these teachers or paraprofessionals empowered and become teachers and have more diversity in the realm of teaching. These silos keep us from sharing with each other, learning from each other, collaborating with complementary skills, but we're all so busy and just so engaged in our projects. So we brought together different members that had mainly been on the podcast and created a collective and met quarterly with guest speakers and activism. And we were super excited. And then we culminated those 2 years that were kind of locked down, 2020 and 2021, with a summit. And that was a free summit. And we had video. You could come through. The first year it was intergenerational, and Heirs to Our Oceans, which is a student environmental group, and Youth by Youth, and Up for Learning. Students were on presenting. So it was intergenerational. And it was just saying, look at all of these resources, and we
Yeah.
need to start playing together so that we can share and grow together and not be in isolation. So it was powerful. And I really appreciate all the collaboration and the amazing expertise that came together to donate their time for that.
Got it. Wow. Exciting, exciting. And let's talk more about some of the obstacles that you're tackling, right? And what are some of them that you've overcome, would you say, in your career that really help inspire others?
I think a big obstacle when I meet with families and explore different learning options, if something isn't working where they are, a big obstacle is we parents think we know education. I went through this. I know this. It should look like this. And I've had parents say, well, I want my son to be happy. He's failing all of his classes, but he's with his friends. Well, his friends are going to graduate in 2 more years and he's not. So how happy will he be then? So, but they aren't willing to look at different possibilities, different combinations. What does this kid need? How can we get him there?
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes it's like I want my kid to be happy. And I've had other parents that overcome that obstacle. It's like, nope, I've incentivized it for my kid and he will try a different model. And usually it's ours. He will try this for a semester. And then with that educated
Yep.
choice and not just where
Yep.
are my friends, then he gets a voice. But
Mm-hmm.
until then, I'm the parental unit and I'm making it really positive for him.
Aw.
The new pair of tennis shoes, the whatever, for giving this a try. But I have to be that parent. I have to keep seeking so that my learner can find a place where he, she, they can thrive.
Oh my gosh. And helping those thrive. Also, we want to talk more about mentorship, which really helps
Ah,
kids, especially, and as an adult, thrive. Did you have a mentor growing up, and do you mentor anyone as well, Maureen?
yes. So I did have informal mentors and I didn't even realize it. In high school, I was super involved with the Special Kiwanis Youth Club and working in the resource room with people that Down syndrome and mental disabilities and the special ed teachers like, hey, you want to do an independent study? And he was giving me college textbooks and assignments, and I was chewing it up and I had no idea. And then in college, the person that places people in student teaching roles, Dennis Martinen, put me in with an amazing open concept group. So for my first exposure, and then with Vicky Swartz, who had just come back from a Fulbright teaching experience in England and had done Bank Street, Columbia College's education program and was so thematic and student centered. So all of these mentors formed me. And at the time, I didn't even realize how amazing they were. And I'm super grateful to them. And
Yeah.
I like to play it forward. I'm mentoring a local kid
Mm,
whose dad works at the Mexican restaurant that we love and helping him look at what he can do now that he's 21. My husband's
mhm.
helping him look at Boeing positions that are open. I am connected with Youth by Youth and I'm an ally, which is intergenerational and we learn from each other. I've been doing that for a couple of years. There's just different ways that I like to
Yeah.
mentor and support our younger teachers. So
Mhm.
I think it's really important that we give back, especially once our career is established, but all along the way, because
I agree.
people gave to us. We have to pay it
Yeah.
forward.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing that. Also, we only have a few minutes left in the show, but I really want to ask you about a tragedy that happened in 2020, which
Oh,
really, in a sense, helped you and determined to be fierce on schools, equity, inclusion. Could you share? I know it's emotional. Would you mind sharing that story with us?
yeah. So love and belonging. I am totally determined that our schools are on that. And before that, the L word was kind of like, you don't really say that in schools. And it's like, no, I unapologetically say we have to love our kids. We have to model that love, that mutual respect. We have to model that differences that we talk it out. My daughter and her best friend were really active in the Seattle Black Lives Matters protests and
Wow.
lived on Capitol Hill.
Wow.
And the her best friend, her roommate had lived in our house with us. They'd been buddies for 8 years. So her one solid friend after overseas. And during Black Lives Matters in a peaceful protest, and it was beautiful. The road was blocked off, and a car broke through the barriers, the police barriers, and slammed into the protest and murdered my daughter's roommate. And to me, it's just like, how can we have that much hate? How can we have all of this serial murder stuff? Where is our love? And when we are, as a country, focusing on differences and hate, we're not modeling love. And if we don't
Ah,
give love in schools where we have them 6 hours a day, if we don't value humans and model that, where are they going to get that? Because this hate is not
wow.
okay.
Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. Thank you for sharing, but I know there's so much that you want to help now people prevent future tragedies like this. And obviously, with your work, you're educating so many and helping them through. And we just have 2 minutes left in the show. So, how did you want to kind of end this for today?
You know, I love when people share just something that's an inspirational message or quote. And the poet Mary Oliver, she passed a few years ago, but was really into nature and a quiet person. She has this quote that always reminds me of how precious our life is and how short it is and how intentional we have to be. So I would end with her quote where she is challenging us. And her question is, what are you going to do with your one wild and precious life?
Oh. Beautiful. Thank you so much for inspiring us and helping so many. And at this time, let's remind everyone how we can reach out to you, please.
Maureen at educationevolution excuse me, .org is the best way, or find me on LinkedIn.
Perfect. And I know for LEADPrep, you're also accepting, it says on the website, new applications for, is that true?
Absolutely. 6th through 12th graders in the greater Seattle area.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Looking forward to getting to know you more. Sorry for the hiccup today of starting a little later, but really, it's empowering what you do. And thank you for being here, being
Thank
such an
you.
amazing role model to so many and helping people. That's touches my heart today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jill.
All right.
Nice
Thank you
talking with
again,
you.
Dr. Maureen O'Shaughnessy. Remember, reach out to her and we'll talk soon. Have a great day. Thank you.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.